Welcome to Warriors of the World. Today, we dive into the history of one of the most legendary military units of 17th century France, the King's Musketeers. They weren't just soldiers, nor mere royal guards. They were an elite force, sworn to protect the king and fight on the battlefield with unmatched skill and bravery. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you the most epic stories of history's greatest warriors. Join our community and travel through time with us. The King's Musketeers were officially formed in 1622, during the reign of Louis XIII. The idea of a royal guard was nothing new. European monarchs had relied on elite warriors for centuries. But France needed more than just bodyguards. In an age of religious wars, political conspiracies, and foreign threats, the king required fighters who were both skilled in battle and loyal beyond question. To meet this need, Louis XIII created a special light cavalry unit armed with muskets, one of the most advanced firearms of the time. Thus, the musketeers of the military household of the King of France were born, better known simply as the King's Musketeers. From the start, they built a fearsome reputation. They weren't just expert soldiers, they were also men of honor, known for their courage, discipline, and unique fighting style, combining musket warfare with masterful swordsmanship. But their role extended beyond the battlefield. They were the king's eyes and blades, ensuring his safety and authority against threats both foreign and domestic. As the musketeers grew in fame and prestige, they soon found themselves locked in a bitter rivalry with another elite force, the Cardinal's Guard, created by the powerful Prime Minister, Cardinal Richelieu. And this conflict would soon turn deadly. 17th century France wasn't just a battlefield against foreign enemies, it was also a chessboard of political intrigue. Louis XIII and Cardinal Richelieu shared power, but not always the same goals. To maintain his influence, Richelieu formed his own elite force, the Cardinal's Guard, which quickly became the Musketeers' greatest rival. This wasn't just a political standoff, it was personal. The Musketeers stood for direct loyalty to the king, while the Cardinal's Guard served Richelieu's ambitions. And in an era where dueling was a way of life, clashes between the two groups became legendary. In the streets of Paris, in taverns, even outside the royal palace, musketeers and cardinals' guards crossed swords, and often, lives were lost. Beyond these individual duels, the rivalry also played out on the battlefield. France was at war with the powerful House of Habsburg, which controlled Spain and the Holy Roman Empire. Both the musketeers and the cardinals' guard fought in critical campaigns, sometimes even side by side, despite their differences. As the war raged on, the musketeers gained more prestige. Their skill in close combat and marksmanship made them one of the most feared military units in Europe. But their loyalty was not just to the crown, their code of honor and brotherhood set them apart. They weren't just soldiers, they were a symbol of Louis XII's France. The King's Musketeers were never just ceremonial guards, they were a real combat unit, and their first great test came during the 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. What began as a religious conflict between Catholics and Protestants soon escalated into a power struggle for dominance in Europe, with France clashing against the mighty House of Habsburg. When France officially entered the war in 1635, Cardinal Richelieu deployed the musketeers to the front lines. There, they proved to be much more than royal bodyguards. Their speed, discipline, and combat skills made them a formidable force on the battlefield. Unlike traditional cavalry, the musketeers were highly versatile. They fought on horseback but were also skilled in close combat, using swords and pistols to break enemy formations. During the Siege of Corbie, 1636, for example, the musketeers played a crucial role in retaking the city, leading rapid assaults that shattered Spanish morale. But war was merciless. At the Battle of Rocroi, 1643, where France decisively crushed the feared Spanish tercios, the musketeers were at the heart of the fighting. Though victorious, they suffered heavy losses, particularly from enemy artillery. Despite these sacrifices, their reputation soared. The musketeers were no longer just symbols of royal power, they were war-hardened veterans, proving France's dominance in Europe. However, their loyalty would soon be tested after the deaths of Richelieu and Louis XIII. In 1648, France plunged into an internal crisis known as the Fronde, a series of uprisings against the monarchy that nearly tore the kingdom apart. The young Louis XIV was heir to the throne, but real power lay in the hands of his mother, Anne of Austria, and the new prime minister, Cardinal Mazarin. For the first time, the king's musketeers were not fighting foreign enemies. They were ordered to suppress rebellions within France itself. What had once been a war for glory had turned into a battle against their own people. The streets of Paris became a war zone. Nobles unhappy with the increasing centralization of power joined forces with the common people, challenging royal authority. The musketeers found themselves facing barricades, ambushes, and surprise attacks in a city set ablaze. One of the most critical moments came in 1652, when rebels attempted to seize control of the royal palace. The musketeers escorted the young Louis XIV to safety, ensuring the future king's survival. It was during this time that the legendary Charles de Batz de Castelmore, better known as D'Artagnan, rose through the ranks, later becoming captain of the musketeers and inspiring the famous novel by Alexandre Dumas. When the Fronde finally ended in 1653 with the king's victory, the musketeers emerged stronger than ever. Their loyalty had been tested, and with Louis XIV now firmly on the throne, their role in the monarchy was about to become more crucial than ever. With Louis XIV on the throne, the king's musketeers entered their golden age. The Sun King wanted to consolidate his absolute power and make France the most dominant nation in Europe. To achieve this, he needed an elite guard that not only protected him but also embodied the grandeur of his reign. Under the leadership of D'Artagnan, who became captain of the musketeers in 1667, the unit reached unprecedented prestige. No longer just bodyguards, they took part in military campaigns, duels of honor, and secret missions for the king. During the War of Devolution, 1667 to 1668, and the Franco-Dutch War, 1672 to 1678, the musketeers proved their worth on the battlefield. At the Siege of Maastricht, 1673, Louis XIV himself led the charge, surrounded by his musketeers, reinforcing his image as a warrior king. Within the court, the musketeers played a crucial role in maintaining order. Under the king's direct command, they spied on nobles to prevent conspiracies. Some even believe that the mysterious man in the iron mask, whose identity remains unknown, was guarded by the musketeers during his imprisonment. At this time, the musketeers were the ultimate symbol of honor and loyalty. Their code emphasized discipline, bravery, and unwavering service to the king. However, as warfare evolved and politics shifted, their importance within the monarchy began to decline. By the late 17th century, France remained Europe's most powerful nation, but times were changing. Wars were no longer won by light cavalry and sword fights. Instead, artillery, disciplined infantry formations, and modern tactics determined battles. This shift meant that, despite their prestige, the musketeers were no longer as essential on the battlefield. After Louis XIV's death in 1715, his successor, Louis XV, did not share the same enthusiasm for the unit. Though the musketeers continued to serve as royal guards, their influence steadily diminished. Government officials saw them as an expensive and outdated relic of the past. In 1776, facing severe financial troubles, Louis XVI ordered the disbandment of the musketeers. The decision shocked many, as they were a powerful symbol of the monarchy. However, with no wars where they could prove their worth and their high maintenance cost, their fate was sealed. The unit was briefly reinstated in 1789, just before the French Revolution, but by then, the world had changed. The monarchy was collapsing, and the musketeers could not save it. In 1792, with the abolition of the monarchy, the musketeers were permanently disbanded. Although they ceased to exist as a military force, their legacy endured through history, Alexandre Dumas novels, and popular culture. While their time as warriors had ended, the image of honorable men, loyal to the death, would continue to inspire generations. Though the king's musketeers disappeared as a military unit in the 18th century, their legacy never faded. Over time, their real history was overshadowed by legend, and in the 19th century, a writer immortalized them in one of the most famous novels ever written, The Three Musketeers, by Alexandre Dumas. Published in 1844, Dumas' work was not an accurate historical account, but rather a thrilling adventure novel inspired by real figures and events. D'Artagnan, the protagonist, was based on Charles de Batz de Castelmore d'Artagnan, an actual captain of the musketeers who served under Louis XIV. His fictional companions, Athos, Porthos, and Aramis, embodied different aspects of the musketeer ethos, blending fact and fiction. The novel captivated readers with its duels, conspiracies, and the famous motto, "One for all and all for one." While the real musketeers had no official slogan, this phrase perfectly captured their sense of brotherhood and loyalty. Dumas based much of his novel on The Memoirs of D'Artagnan, a book from 1700 written by Gatien de Courtels de Sandras, which mixed real events with exaggerations and dramatic flourishes. Despite its historical inaccuracies, the novel transformed the musketeers into a universal symbol of courage, camaraderie, and adventure. Since then, the musketeers have been portrayed in countless films, TV series, and stage adaptations. Their image, warriors with plumed hats, elegant cloaks, and a sword in one hand and a musket in the other, became an enduring cultural icon, far beyond the real history. Throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, the musketeers have remained a staple of popular culture. Classic films like The Three Musketeers, 1973, starring Michael York, and newer adaptations like the 2011 version featuring Logan Lerman have kept the legend alive. Beyond cinema and television, the musketeers have left their mark on other media. In video games, they appear in titles like Age of Empires 3 and Assassin's Creed, Unity, blending historical accuracy with fiction. In literature, they continue to inspire novels and comics that explore their adventures from fresh perspectives. Even today, in France, the musketeers remain a national symbol. The French Olympic fencing team adopted their famous motto, and D'Artagnan's image is used in cultural and tourist events, especially in Gascony, his birthplace. Beyond fiction, their real legacy as elite warriors, loyal to the king, and masters of combat continues to fascinate historians and fans alike. They represent an era when honor and the sword still played a central role in politics and warfare. But their story leaves us with a question. Were they truly the noble heroes we imagine, or simply soldiers in service of an absolute king? The tale of the musketeers reminds us that behind every legend lies a more complex reality, filled with both light and shadow. The king's musketeers have been immortalized as noble and courageous heroes, but how accurate is that image? History tells us that the truth is far more complex than the legend. While they were indeed an elite unit, not all musketeers were honorable warriors. Many joined for money or social status, and not all were skilled fighters. Their famous duels with the Cardinal's Guard were often not acts of heroism but personal rivalries fueled by pride and ambition. Despite the fictional motto, "One for all, and all for one," the musketeers were not always loyal to each other. The French court was full of betrayals and power struggles, and more than a few musketeers switched sides when it benefited them. Militarily, their importance has often been exaggerated. While they participated in key campaigns, they were not the decisive force in France's wars. Their real strength lay in quick assaults, espionage, and protecting the king, rather than in large-scale battles. However, their symbolic presence was undeniable. They represented the absolute power of the king, demonstrating his ability to surround himself with France's finest warriors. And while their military role faded over time, their legend only grew stronger in popular culture. More than 3 centuries after their disbandment, the musketeers remain one of the most famous military units in history. Unlike many elite forces that faded into obscurity, their image has survived through literature, cinema, and television. Today, their story is taught in French history classes as part of the nation's heritage. Their influence can still be seen in many areas. In sports, where French fencing has adopted their motto. In tourism, with museums and festivals celebrating their legacy. In pop culture, with countless films, comics, and video game adaptations. But in the end, one question remains. Were they truly heroes, or just soldiers of an absolute monarchy? Perhaps their greatest victory was not on the battlefield, but in becoming a timeless symbol of adventure, honor, and brotherhood. Thank you for joining us on Warriors of the World. Don't forget to subscribe, turn on notifications, and become a channel member to support our project. Leave your thoughts in the comments and share this video with fellow history lovers. See you in the next battle.